St. John Chrysostom lived in the 400s, long time ago, born in Antioch of a prestigious family, and he was very well educated. He studied, he became a deacon and then a priest and was a bishop of Constantinople. He was persecuted just like Padre Pio was. There were so many who were jealous of what his success was. And there were so many who falsely accused him of things, so much so that eventually he was exiled and persecuted. He didn't retaliate. He continued to pray. Just like with Padre Pio, people began to question him. They began to doubt the stigmata. They began to cause rumors saying that he was teaching heresy to people. And many people were just jealous of him, apparently. But what did Padre Pio do? He too kept silent. He prayed for them. He prayed for them. He didn't retaliate, just like the gospel said tonight. They're fine examples as saints of what we need to do. Love your enemies and do good to those who persecute you. Padre Pio said, I belong to everyone. Everyone belongs to me. And he was very, very adamant about the fact that his one concern was saving souls, that God loved every single human person, and if he could help them realize that love of God for them, his life would be successful. That's all that he wanted. He heard confessions 12 hours a day. Imagine, because he was so concerned about extending the mercy of God to people. And then God gifted him with the ability to see right into a person's soul. Now that's a little unnerving, isn't it? If you come to confession and I tell you, wait a minute, you forgot something. That would be a little unnerving, but Padre Pio could do that. And he was a man who certainly loved the Eucharist and the stigmata. What a tremendous reality in his body. He was hearing confessions, and he had that stigmata, I think, for 50 years. And the wounds of Christ in his hands and his side and his feet. And it was painful. It wasn't just that there were marks there. His hands actually bled. They say it was the aroma of flowers. Very beautiful aroma came from those wounds. But he suffered. They were painful. But he was so united with Christ and so one with Christ, who came to give his life so that we might be saved, that he even bore in his own body the wounds of Christ. I think he was the only priest that has received the stigmata in history. St. Padre Pio had a great love for the poor. He could perform miracles. There were times, a couple times, when they were giving out bread to everybody and they ran out. And Padre Pio steps into the other room and comes back out with a whole armful of bread. He got that from Jesus too, multiplying bread. And certainly many people were cured by him of physical and mental illnesses because he was bringing the grace of God to others. He had a heart like Christ. He could see the suffering of people, and he wanted to be able to help in whatever way he could. And even if he didn't cure them, I'm sure he brought great comfort to those who were suffering. And so he became a very popular saint very quickly and was canonized. He died in 1968, and he was canonized by Pope John Paul II in 2002. So he was canonized rather quickly. I also read that a young priest named Carol Voltia, who was the future John Paul II, went to confession to Padre Pio when he was a young priest. Can you imagine? And of course, everybody wanted to know if Padre Pio told him he was going to be the Pope, and he made it very clear that that never came up. He was only a priest then, and that never came up. But there was one saint hearing the confession of a potential saint, of John Paul II. So you see that interaction. I mean, what are the odds of that happening? They didn't live in the same place, but somehow Carol Voltia wanted to go and visit this priest that he had heard about, who was a very holy priest. So when we read the scriptures today, we see that we can do nothing to cause another to sin. That was Padre Pio and that was John Chrysostom. They wanted us all to love others with the love of Christ. That's what it is. And I think the fact that God allows some things to happen, like the chalice that we're going to use tonight. People have touched that chalice and have been cured of illnesses. It's a miracle. But it just shows, I think it's God going the extra way of letting us know when we wonder sometimes, does God care about me at all? And that God can allow a miracle to happen through the intercession of a great saint. And Padre Pio is given that privilege by God, not only when he was alive, but also in death, that many people have come to closer to God and have been healed physically and spiritually because of him. So I think it's a sign of, God's ever continuous love for us, that he's with us always. Death does not separate us from the one who has died. We're not separated from Padre Pio any more than we are separated from our loved ones. Physically, we're separated, but spiritually, they're very much with us. And so tonight, as we celebrate the Mass, we remember the greatest act of love ever, Jesus Christ giving us his body and blood on the cross. And you and I have the privilege tonight, not just touching a chalice that Padre Pio used, but of receiving the very body and blood of Christ himself. That is the greatest miracle that happens here tonight. His body and blood becoming present on our altar and within our mind, our hearts, and our bodies becomes present within us, the greatest privilege and the greatest miracle. So thanks for being here tonight. Your faith brings you here to the Mass, to this church, the memory of Padre Pio, and all your special intentions. And so we thank God for you being here tonight. Let us continue with devotion. Let us stand now and offer our prayers and petitions.